really the Aarons who were my bosses when I was a youth director. So I don't think that there's really many people who aren't on this year who intimidates me to give this year. But I can't tell you how much it means to me to be invited to share some words of Torah in Fair Lawn, even though I'm thousands of miles away. But like Rabbi Marco said, this is how I generally teach Torah. I teach Torah from this spot right here on Zoom. So I'm used to the format, but it really is it's wonderful to quote unquote return to Fair Lawn, and I nothing but the fondest memories of my years growing up in Fair Lawn, and it's I don't know if any community has ever replicated what Fair Lawn has in terms of teaching what a community really is. And I'm blessed to have been raised there. So it's with great trepidation that I try to share some thoughts. Rabbi Markowitz asked me to begin with a memory from Fair Lawn, so I'll remember just Shavuos every year in Fair Lawn. So I remember that thinking to myself, how in the world could any one rabbi teach for 6 straight hours, and seeing Rabbi Yudin's packet of Makomos downstairs in the youth minyan room where he would teach, and the teenagers taking the upstairs right side of the women's section in the main shul, spending. I went to Frisch, and Frisch every year would have a test on a Sefer and Tanakh, an unseen, what they call in Israel, where you weren't able to, you didn't know what would be on the test necessarily. You were given a full Sefer of Tanakh that you had to know by the end of Shavuos. So it was a genius idea in retrospect, because we couldn't waste a minute on Shavuos getting into trouble or doing who knows what we would have done had we not had that test coming up right after Shavuos. So we would all study. We would all study that and learn Torah on Shavuos night, and there were snacks, and it was it's a fond memory. So that's my Fair Lawn memory that I'll share right to start off. What I would like to discuss, and Rishus Rabbi Marcos, Rishus Rabbi Yudin, what I would like to discuss is something it's an interesting phenomena, is that Har Sinai was probably one of the most important moments in our history, if not the most important moment of our history, and it plays very little role in our lives today. I live, as Rabbi Markowitz mentioned, I live in Eretz Yisrael. I live halfway between the cities of Yerushalayim and Yericho, and almost every single step I take, right or left, within view shot of some momentous occasion in our history that I commemorate almost daily, right? Whether it's the Jews coming into Eretz Yisrael, I can see from my porch the spot that they came in a place today called Kasser Al Yehud, or if I turn around and look the other way, I can see Har Zaysim from my house. And each of these spots is something that we mention all the time. But there are no trips to Har Sinai. There's no tours to Har Sinai. We don't mention Har Sinai really in our tefillos. We don't talk about it. So why is Har Sinai forgotten? We know the medrash that Har Sinai was this small mountain, and the goal of picking a small mountain was that it did not become a place where we return to. That really where we return to is only Eretz Yisrael. That's the destination. So that makes sense, but it seems just a little dry that we don't have anything about Har Sinai in our tradition, or anything really in our daily commemorations, and anything in our Avodas Hashem. Har Sinai plays just about no role, and that's a very strange thing. So, looking through various different svarim and looking through various different areas, actually you can find a lot about Har Sinai, and they play a very interesting role in different halachic areas, and that's what I want to discuss. 3 of them where we do see Har Sinai play a role, but they're kind of like hidden. It's behind the scenes. So the first place that I want to point to is Kriyas HaTorah itself, and a famous idea that Rav Soloveitchik brought from somebody named the Maharam Rutenberg. I'm not sure what everybody's personal custom is, but the Maharam Rutenberg is quoted as saying that one should stand up for Kriyas HaTorah. Kriyas HaTorah was instituted by Moshe Rabbeinu, and the idea behind Kriyas HaTorah was that Bnei Yisrael, while they're in the desert, went 3 days, and after 3 days they rebelled. And it seems to be they rebelled because they didn't have enough water in the desert. And someone who lives in the desert, I can tell you how crucial water is. That makes sense. But our rabbis teach us that it wasn't water that they were really lacking, but rather mayim is always compared to Torah, and they were lacking Torah, which seems awfully strange. That 3 days after Har Sinai, they walk away and no one's learning Torah. I mean, just from the novelty of it, this is the first time they got the Torah. So just the novelty, the newness of the Torah would tell you that that's something that they should have been involved in. So how is it that they weren't studying Torah for 3 days, and all of a sudden Moshe Rabbeinu comes along, and the Nevi'im at the time, the Rambam says, came along and said, you know what we have to do? We have to institute that we read the Torah every 3 days, because if Bnei Israel doesn't have Torah every 3 days, they're going to rebel. That seems very strange. 3 days without learning Torah, and all of a sudden we're worried about an uprising and a rebellion, and that's it. And all of a sudden we're going to read the Torah and it's going to help us. How is it that we're going to lane on Monday morning? We'll lane Rishon from Parshas Tetzaveh, and all of a sudden nobody's going to rebel anymore. So that seems a little funny if you just to take it at a superficial way. So the idea behind this notion of 3 days wasn't so much the limud haTorah, but rather it was recreating a moment in history. If we can just think for a second and close our eyes and imagine the moment at Har Sinai, it's so foreign and so strange to us. There's really nothing that we could give an analogy or compare it to. But imagine the entire nation standing around a mountain, and not a large mountain, and their leader, who they depend on, has gone up the mountain. Some of their other leaders are halfway up the mountain. Maybe we could see them, maybe we can't. And we're standing there, and all of a sudden, physical phenomena that we're not used to, and these are people who had seen the 10 plagues. All of a sudden, these immense physical phenomena start occurring, lightning and thunder, and a shofar blast that gets louder and louder, and then all of a sudden a divine voice is manifest that is so terrifying and so scary that the people beg for it to stop. So just picture that in our minds, feel that and what that was like for the Jewish people at the time. It was an awesome moment in our history, an awesome moment in each of those people's existence. So much so that our rabbis tell us that it's as if we were all there ourselves. That moment wasn't a moment to be forgotten. That was a moment to carry us through for our entire existence as a people. And the question is, how do we go about doing that? How do we go about carrying that existence of the Har Sinai moment throughout history, thousands upon thousands of years later till today? Where do we see such a thing? Hi, Chevy. So how do we see such a moment like that? And the answer is going back to this institution of Kriyas HaTorah. The Rabbi Uri Pilichowski, who we mentioned before, says that, and again, we don't hold this way l'halacha, so nobody should feel that if they sit through Kriyas HaTorah, they're doing something wrong. The Rabbi Uri Pilichowski was accustomed to standing up during the reading of the Torah. The entire reading of the Torah he would stand for. And in explanation of that, the Chafetz Chaim wrote that the Rabbi Uri Pilichowski understood Kriyas HaTorah as a recreation of this Har Sinai moment. It's where the entire Jewish people are getting together, each in our own shuls, or today maybe in our backyards or out on the street, as we've been doing here in Eretz Yisrael, and taking out a Sefer Torah and recreating Har Sinai, where the Gabbai, the Baal Koreh, the Gabbai Sheni, all act as representatives of that moment of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Moshe Rabbeinu, Klal Yisrael, all standing around the mountain, and the Bima becomes Har Sinai. And the idea behind making sure that we read the Torah every 3 days isn't for the limud haTorah, it's not for the learning of the Torah, but rather the idea is to have that inspirational moment of Har Sinai, to recreate that moment of Har Sinai, those feelings that we had back then, to try to grasp just a little of them and bring them into who we are and what we are today. And if we can do that every 3 days and have that feeling, that spark of inspiration every 3 days, and again on Shabbat at Mincha, and we could do that, That inspiration will carry us for 3 days and ensure that as a people we don't rebel. But if we forget Har Sinai, if we forget that awesome moment of rendezvous with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, then we run into a problem. But the moment that we remember our time with the Kadosh Baruch Hu at Har Sinai, that can carry us through. And that's the first place we see Har Sinai in our lives today. Where really, a lot of times we look at Kriyas Torah and we hope the Baal Korah is not going to go too slow, and we hope the Gabbai is not going to make too long of a Mishaberach, and we hope that it won't hold up shul too long. But really what it's supposed to be, take a deep breath. It's the same way we're supposed to before our Shemona Esrei. Take a deep breath and think about what I'm about to do, before whom I am about to stand. And the same thing is true of Kriyas Torah. We should think before we start reading the Torah and we start listening to the Kriyas Torah that I'm actually at Har Sinai. And go through that exercise in our minds of what was that moment of inspiration like. That's the first idea that I want to go through. The next two ideas are things that are found in responsa of Maimonides of the Rambam. And they're not so well known. And I'm going to tell you the first one I'm going to bring up is, if you've never heard it before, most people haven't, you're going to think that I'm lying. And if anybody would like, I can send it to you afterwards, because I'm almost sure that everybody here is going to say he doesn't know what he's talking about. Is this crazy guy in Israel? He's not. Maybe disowned me from my lineage of Farallon, but I'm telling you, this is true. This is 100% true. If you go through a Mishnah Torah, the Rambam's work, the Mishnah Torah, his halachic work, and you open up to where he lists the Birchas HaTorah, you'll find in our Rambams that we have today, you'll find the Birchas HaTorah with maybe one or two differences in the words. You'll find the same Birchas HaTorah that we have in our Siddur. But if you look at the old editions of the Rambam, right behind me here, I have a Rambam from the 1700s. So if you look through the old editions of the Rambam, and you open up to see his text of the Birchas HaTorah that he actually wrote, that the Rambam actually wrote, you'll find something very strange. The Rambam wrote in his version of the Birchas HaTorah what he thought were the three brachos that we make every single morning before we study Torah. He felt that each bracha has, we're used to the brachos. The first one is, depending on your minhag, either lasok b'divrei Torah or al divrei Torah. The second bracha, v'ha'erev na, is a longer bracha, and it ends with what we call a chasima. It ends with the signature of the bracha. And for most of us, we're going to say the words, Baruch Atah Hashem ha'melame Torah l'amo Yisrael. We say, God, you're the source of all blessing, the one who teaches Torah to his nation, the Jewish people. The next bracha of Asher Bachar Banu ends also with a chasima, with a signature, and it's Notein HaTorah, Nosein HaTorah, the one who gives the Torah. Though that's the common, that's what we'll find in our Siddur, and that's what we'll find in the Mishnah Torahs printed today. But if you look at the authentic text of the Rambam, the old Mishnah Torahs, and again the ones that are verified, that I have a Rambam in my house that's a photocopy of the Rambam's actual handwriting. And if you look in that Rambam, there's a strange phenomena. The second bracha, v'ha'erev na, doesn't end with the words Melame Torah l'amo Yisrael, but rather ends with the words Nosein HaTorah. And then he ends the third bracha again, Nosein HaTorah. So you say the exact same bracha twice in a row. You don't have that ever. We don't have such a thing. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't fit into any of the halachic norms that we're used to, that we would recite the exact same bracha twice. And it's so strange that the Jews of Lunel in Europe, when they read the Rambam, when they got their copies of the Mishnah Torah, so they said, this doesn't make any sense. There has to be some sort of mistake here. And they wrote to the Rambam. They said, you made a mistake. You wrote inside the Mishnah Torah the same bracha twice. We can't say the same bracha twice. That doesn't make any sense. And the Rambam wrote back to them and said, listen, the foundational principle of the entire Torah rests on one idea. We have free choice. We are able to choose our destiny. We're able to choose what we want to do. If you want to make a bracha, that's your choice. You don't want to make a bracha, that's your choice. There's no kfiyah, there's no forcing. No one's going to tell you, you have to make a bracha. We're given by God the choice whether to make a bracha or not make a bracha. You can't deny that as part of our faith. That's what we are. If God would teach us the Torah, if he would be the Malamei Torah La'amo Yisrael, that would interfere with our choice. Rather, at Har Sinai, what God did was, he was the Nosein HaTorah. He gave us the Torah. He said, here, this is for you. I'm commanding you to study this and to observe its commands, but I'm giving it to you. I'm not teaching it to you. I will not teach it to you. I'm going to give it to you. I'm not your teacher. You're going to have experts. They're going to be chachamim, wise people, and they will teach it to you. But I'm just commanding to give it to you. So the Rambam says, and then now I'm putting words into the Rambam's mouth, but we can imagine him saying such a thing, that of course he saw the text of Malamei Torah La'amo Yisrael. It's in the Gemara. It's in Maseches Brachos. He knew it. He said, I saw it, and it didn't make any sense. HaKadosh Baruch Hu cannot be a Malamei Torah La'amo Yisrael. What happened at Har Sinai, and this is the second idea that we have at Har Sinai in our times, what happened is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the Torah. And he said very simply, Lo b'shamayim. It's no longer mine. This Torah now belongs to you, the Jewish people. You have a command, but it's your choice, whether you want to follow this or not. But in no way, shape, or form am I going to teach you this Torah. Moshe is going to be your first teacher, and you're going to have Yehoshua. And down the line, all the way until today, the people that teach us Torah are they're the Malamei Torah La'amo Yisrael, not HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the Rambam incredibly changes what we know as the bracha and says we're going to say the same bracha twice, because to change the words of the bracha is even less sensical than saying this a concept that would go against and contradict a principle of the Torah of free choice. So when you go out today and you buy a Mishnah Torah, and the Mishnah Torah has the text of the brachos that we have in our siddur, what happened was somebody looked at the Mishnah Torah, saw the same bracha twice, and said, "No, that doesn't make any sense. There must be a mistake in the Rambam's girsa," and then they changed it. But really, that's not true. The Rambam did it on purpose and showed what Har Sinai really is to all of us, was this moment that we were given the Torah and that we had to master the Torah. So that's a second idea of where we see the moment of Har Sinai today. The last is something that I hope I don't get in trouble for teaching. This is the last idea that we see Har Sinai. The Gemara in Brachos talks about the idea of incorporating the Aseres HaDibros, the 10 Commandments, into the davening in the morning. That just like we have portions of the Torah that we say, right? We have Kriya Shema. Kriya Shema is not a tefillah, it's not a prayer. Kriya Shema is a statement of our axioms of what we believe. We believe Kriya Shema. These are the philosophical ideas that we believe in. So, and we recite them. We're not reciting them to God. We're reciting them. This is what we believe. I'm accepting the Ol Machul Shemayim. I'm accepting that I'm going to follow the Torah, and that's why I say Shema. So in the same way, the rabbi said, let's put in the Aseres HaDibros. Let's put in the 10 Commands. We say Az Yashir as part of davening, right? We recite the portion that happened right before Har Sinai. So let's recite Har Sinai's moments during davening, during Shacharis. Put it right in there. And the Gemara rejects the idea. The Gemara rejects the notion because of a fear that the Gemara had. The fear the Gemara had would be that I'm going to say, well, the 10 Commandments are in davening. They're part of the text of the siddur. And since they're part of the text of the siddur, they must be of more importance than the other 603 mitzvahs. And that is not true. And then what's going to happen is there's going to be a danger. Heretics are going to come along and say, really, all you have to do is keep the 10 Commandments. We see this in other religions. This notion has actually set itself in place in other places, in other religions. Not by us, thank God. And the rabbis couldn't accept this idea, even this fear. as far and as distant as it might be, and we might think that the chance of it happening are probably very, very low. But at the same time, they were worried about it. And they said that we're not going to incorporate it into davening. And that's why today there's not a person in the Jewish religion that recites the Ten Commandments as part of their tefillah. It's never, not Ashkenazim, not Sephardim, not Teimanim, not Persians. Nobody has it as part of their girsa, and that's a good thing. The Rambam is a das yachid. He's an individual opinion, and nobody agrees with him really. We haven't seen anybody really agree with him on this. But the Rambam was asked about, in his response, it was asked about the custom of standing up during the Aseret Adibros, whether it be during Parshas Yisro or Parshas Veschanan or tomorrow morning in davening on Shavuos. And the custom that where right before we read the Aseret Adibros, the Gabbai gives a clap on the bima, and the entire show rises for the moment of Har Sinai, and we can understand it, right? The same way the Marami Rutenberg had the custom to stand up for all of Kriyas Torah. Okay, so we don't do that. We don't stand up for all of Kriyas Torah. But this awesome moment where at least we're going to commemorate Har Sinai and read about Har Sinai. So just like everybody at Har Sinai stood at Har Sinai, so too when we read the moment of Har Sinai, let's stand up and let's recreate the moment and feel it ourselves. And the custom is a beautiful custom that everybody stands up. The Rambam says, no way. Can't have anybody stand up during Aseret Adibros. When they read the Ten Commandments, you must sit down. It's completely forbidden. Forbidden. He doesn't say it's not our custom. He says it's forbidden. Absolutely 100%. You are not allowed to stand up during the Aseret Adibros. So what's his objection? So his objection comes from this Gemara in Brachos. He says the same exact idea. He says that what's going to happen, people are going to see that we stand up for the Aseret Adibros. We don't stand up for any other part of the Torah. Okay, Az Yashir, we'll set that aside. But we don't stand up for any other parts of the Torah. So why are we standing up for Kriyas HaTorah? For the Aseret Adibros? Well, it must be because it's more important. And if it's more important, then the same fear exists. Maybe then we're going to go ahead and then say we really only have to follow the 10 Commandments. The other 603 are nice, but they're not as important, and we really don't have. Yeah, we could do fine by just observing the first 10 Commandments that we had at Har Sinai. 3 places in Halacha where we see Har Sinai taking a role: Kriyas HaTorah and the custom of recreating the reading of the Torah. The second place we talked about is the text of the brachos, of whether we say Melamei Torah L'Amo Yisrael or Nosei Torah, and lastly, in the idea of whether or not we stand up during the Aseret Adibros. So I don't want anybody to have the impression that Har Sinai was a once in a moment occurrence in our history, and we don't say it again. But there's one last lesson that I want to leave with, and with this I'll end. Har Sinai as a moment in history is sort of encapsulates the entire world around us. And what do I mean by that? The world lends us opportunities, but also there's danger. Har Sinai was just like that. The opportunity was amazing at Har Sinai. It was a moment that we had to grow as a nation, to grow as a people, and to start off our relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu in a way of wisdom. But at the same time, it posed a danger. It had the opportunity and the ability to lead us astray if we paid too much attention to what was happening there. The most important principle is the Torah itself. Not the moment in time, not the location, but the wisdom of the Torah. And that's what we're commanded to delve into. That's what we're commanded to spend our time on. And on Shavuos and tomorrow morning, whether it's during Kriyas HaTorah, tonight when we're studying Torah, that's the greatest opportunity that mankind has. And that's what we should appreciate. Rabbi Markowitz, thank you so very much for this opportunity. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. It made my yontif, it made my week, the whole week anticipating this. And as nervous as I was, I have to tell you, I really appreciate it. And Rabbi Yudin, it's wonderful to see you and Chevy and everybody else. It's like being at home again. So thank you very, very much for having me.
Thank you, Uri. You were great.
Cool, Rabbi Yudin. Rabbi Yudin, you'll agree. Maybe you'll agree with me. Rabbi Yudin would say right now, Zenana, the Zenana. No? Yasher Koach Gadol. Thank you. Thank you so much for your words of inspiration, giving us a framework for Har Sinai and appreciating it even today in Tufshin Pei. And Bezrat Hashem, we'll see everyone tomorrow morning around the mountain. I was hoping, Rav Uri, maybe this is the first of many. You can give us some tours of, outside on your porch. And
everyone's invited. Everyone's invited in person, and if we want to do it over Zoom, that's also fine as well.
Okay, that's starting tomorrow night. You guys, after Yontif, quarantined by the Pilichowskis. That's it, 14 days. Yasher Koach Gadol, thank you so much. I wish you and your family, Stuart and Ruth as well, a Chag Kosher v'Sameach. That should be a healthy, safe, and Simcha Dik Yontif for you and for all of Klal Yisrael.